Hey guys, TheJiggyJoe here. Coming at you with their first ever, uh, what I would like to call a honest Joe review. I want to start off with a TV show that has been created by Amazon called Invincible. And basically, Invincible is a show that has been in production for, I don't know, like 3 years at this point, give or take maybe 2 years. They're on season 3, and the finale for season 3 just finished today. So let me start out by saying Invincible currently is my favorite TV show that is currently airing right now. And there's several different reasons for that. A part of it is a little bit nostalgia for the early cartoons in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s and the style that it's kind of made. But also just because of the direction that they're heading with the show is honestly fantastic, and I think it's unmatched currently in the environment. So what do we mean by that? Basically, Invincible. I'm just gonna talk about season 3. I'm gonna go into it in a non-spoilery fashion, and then towards the end, I will talk about some spoilers, and I'll let you guys know ahead of time what I mean in terms of the spoilers and stuff. I don't want to ruin it for you guys if you have not watched it yet. So basically, the show centers around Mark, who is a half human, half Viltrumite, and the Viltrumites are basically a offset of a Kryptonian, basically like Superman. So all these, they're basically superhuman, super strength, very powerful. They can fly, super speed. Basically, all of the main superpowers that you'd get with Superman is basically what they are. So going from there, the show starts with Mark as he kind of grows and develops his superpowers, and focused around him as a character being younger, trying to fill in the shoes of other superheroes, and also trying to learn to hone in on his superpowers, but also just trying to live as like a normal human being as well. So he goes to school, he talks to friends, and he struggles with the dichotomy between, you know, him fighting as a superhero and trying to actually have a normal life, which is done really well in the show. But then as the show progresses, he starts to talk to more people, he starts to date new people, and it really gets into the relationship, the nitty gritty of that as well. It's fantastic. It's done really well, and the writing it feels very natural. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's almost like a normal conversation between people. Nothing feels unnatural, and it just flows really well. I think that is one of the most biggest positives. So let me just start off by saying season 3 starts off directly after season 2. I'm not going to get into the spoilers of what happens in season 2 or really of season 3 right now, but it takes part directly after the second season. First 2 seasons are 16 episodes. The third season is another 8 episodes for a total of 24. All of them are fantastic. I do have to say, there is a little bit of a decline in animation quality for season 3, which I did notice immediately, which is kind of weird because in earlier seasons they do kind of take a jab at animation quality, and maybe that was a way of the animators kind of saying, hey, like this is what happens when funding gets cut, and where they need to make things happen and how they make it work. And I think that's kind of they kind of were preparing their viewers for that to happen possibly in season 3, which is unfortunate because it's Amazon, and Amazon has very deep pockets, and I think that they don't need to I don't think they can be stingy about their wallet essentially. So, but going up from season 2, basically, it blew my expectations completely out of the water. The writing again is top notch. The characters, they took time to develop each and every single character. I'm not talking about just the main characters, but I'm talking about the side characters as well. And they really polished off pretty much all of the characters in this season. And right now they're kind of at a peak I feel like for most of the characters, even the villains are really good, like top notch villains. Like the writing's really good for the villains, so they feel believable. They give you like full on backstories. Like it's fantastic. I've always been a firm believer of if you can find common ground or believability in what a villain's doing, that makes them a good villain. So two examples would be the Joker from The Dark Knight. You know, he's not necessarily doing things out of just being full on malicious and evil and hardy har. He's doing it to kind of like fight back against you know, some of the injustices and stuff that's going on. It's pretty deep. And then also Thanos as well. He thinks that he's justified in his mind to be doing what he's doing, even though it's not great, but you can see where they're coming from and where they could have been corrupted along that line. So let me just go into the fact that it feels like they balanced all of the characters super well. You don't feel like anyone was treated unfairly in the time that they spent on screen. So I'm very happy with how they handled that. Animation quality, you can tell they definitely took a pretty big dip early on in the show. The last two episodes I feel like were the best in terms of animation, and that's also where most of the action is. And I could definitely tell that that's where a lot of the budget went, and that's fine. But I feel like they could definitely, if they took the animation quality in the last two episodes of season 3 and they just brought it through to season 4, I would be so happy. I'd be livid. So the animations aren't great in season 3 until the last two episodes, which is fine. I feel like everything else was done so well that it doesn't, the animation quality for the other 6 episodes doesn't remove from the experience, from what I can tell. So going into it, this series does focus a lot more on the, I don't want to say human aspect because most of the characters are superheroes, but it does focus more so on the connection between the characters and their personal lives and their struggles and all that fun stuff. So I'm really happy that they really dove deep into that, and I feel like it paid off super well. And all of this combined basically makes it one of the best shows on TV right now, period, in my opinion. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and that's fine, but I do think it is worth most people's time, especially if you're interested in the genre that it is. Even if you're not, I can still recommend it. It is a little violent. It is a little violent. There's a lot of language. Bear in mind, but it is just, you know, it's taking the medium and the genre, the cartoons that we grew up on, and it basically aged the genre and the animation with the age of what people are now. There's other examples out there of shows doing this. Ex Machina, I believe is what it's called. The Critical Role show, which is also Amazon, is the same way, where it's an animated show, but it's also done in, you know, adult themes, language, violence, all that stuff. So going into the spoiler section here of the review, I'm just going to go into some minor parts of it, basically, and I'm going to go into mostly the character development. That's, I think, the part that I was most impressed about for this season, was that overall. So basically, Mark continues to push on about how he's struggling as a superhero, trying to find the right thing to do because of mistakes that he's made in the past about not killing certain enemies and supervillains, and the effects of him not killing these people. That continues on through this entire season. And on top of that, he basically struggles with trying to be a good example for his brother, who is half, I don't know the alien type, but he's half Viltrumite, half another alien, because his father went and did the deed with another alien species, and basically that's his brother. So the brother is like, he grows very fast, he ages quickly, but he's also purple. He looks like a human Viltrumite, but he's purple. I think they probably could have done more with that, but you know, just to keep believability, I guess, in the situation. I don't know. It is what it is. So basically, Mark is struggling as, you know, making these decisions as a superhero, trying to develop himself with his relationship with his girlfriend and his parents, specifically his mom, who is seeing this new guy who's actually just a straight up human. So the mom literally went from dating the most powerful superhero in existence, pretty much, to dating another. I think he's a real estate agent, but he's literally just a normal dude. And the normal dude knows that the mom has two superhero kids too, so that's pretty interesting. So you have this dynamic between the two sons. You have the mother who's struggling with what's happening. The two sons trying to grow themselves up and find the dichotomy between being a superhero and a normal person. And the mom is trying to also move on from not having the superhero husband anymore, who's no longer there, and develop that. And then the new guy is trying to find his spot in the family, talking about how he's just a normal dude and how they're how they're superheroes, but he feels maybe he's not supposed to be there. But again, it goes back to the writing of the show. It all feels very natural. It all flows really well, and it's all very believable. And each character does get their own time to really come to their own fruition, which is fantastic. Going back to other characters, the main villain of the show is also very good. He's behind the scenes for most of it, until kind of towards the end. He starts off as kind of like he just sends out these drones, these little circular drones, and to watch the families and the superheroes, and kind of like is being an ominous person. But then eventually he does come out and attacks everyone, and and then at that point it does get pretty crazy. His plan gets revealed in typical fashion, and it's all very explosive, high action, high octane, and it's really good. It's really good. But it doesn't just stop there. Basically, the characters continue to progress past that. On top of all that, there's this huge dynamic between the superheroes and the normal human beings on the planet, just trying to live their lives and just like go to work and go to school, and like the effects of like the blowback of them fighting in these cities. So like the people dying when they get thrown into a building and the building collapsing, and then it's very crazy. It's done really, really well. I am really happy that they decided to go into it, because it kind of goes back to the Justice League, the Snyder cut, basically, where it starts out with Batman, and he's like running towards his building that's being destroyed by Zod and Superman that are fighting, and that's, oh wait, it wasn't, no, it goes back to kind of like Batman versus Superman a little bit, basically, where at the very start of that is the Snyder cut. The very start of that is Batman dealing with the blowback of Superman and Zod fighting in the city and in Gotham, and his building getting destroyed, and seeing the blowback of these people dying and stuff like that. So his outlook on Superman isn't exactly great. But that similar dynamic happens in this show, where these superheroes are trying to do their best and fight off the supervillains and protect people, but there's blowback from that, and there's, you know, it's not great. So you have all of that happening simultaneously, while you have the other superheroes who are also developing. One of my favorites is Rexplode, and he's basically a character that can turn coins and items and objects into, like, he can just make them explode, basically, just as per his name. And he starts off as kind of like this douchebag guy who is kind of a playboy, and doesn't really feel like he grew as a character, because he talks about how at a young age he was taken and basically forced to be a tool for the government, basically to develop him to fight off supervillains. So they pick up basically with that development, and they add an additional character who has the ability to grow and shrink. That's her superpower. And they have this relationship, and they are talking about possibly quitting being a superhero and like running away together and having this life, which is also a it's a something that's common in TV shows and movies where people are talking about retirement and something ends up happening to them, which does end up happening to Rex, unfortunately. So Rex ends up becoming my favorite character in the show. He ends up being like this super well-rounded guy, and he still has this like this funness to him, and he still struggles with a lot, but he actually really comes into himself and like becomes a like actual like decent person, like a genuine dude. And that's what I really liked about that. Towards the end of the show, the main villain ends up sending several versions of Mark, Invincible, to basically just attack willy-nilly just different parts of the world. And he tries to turn the world basically against Invincible from that. Thankfully, somehow people were able to figure out that it wasn't actually Mark that was attacking, because it was happening all over the place at the same time. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. So Rex ends up fighting one of these versions of Mark, and he's ultra powerful, doesn't know what to do to take him out, and he ends up sacrificing himself so that some of his squad can end up getting away. And it's super, it just basically it takes his rise and it really does polish off his character development like super well. But it also hones back to the thing where I was talking about how if a character talks about retirement and they're getting close to it, they end up dying. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of the secondary characters. I don't want to take up too much time since we're already going pretty long for the first video. But basically, again, they're all very well developed. The robot guy develops into basically becoming a Rex 2.0 while also being, you know, the hyper intelligent guy who runs the robots and stuff. And also because, you know, he's spliced together basically from his DNA, which is pretty crazy. He helps with Monster Girl, who has basically a superpower to become a monster, but then when she goes back to being a normal girl, she de-ages, and the super intelligent guy developed a belt that she can wear, so when she does turn into the super monster guy, she doesn't de-age. So he basically saved her life for the most part, which is really cool. You have a dynamic between this other super strong invincible guy who's not invincible. His name is Immortal, I think, and this other character named Duplicate, who has the ability to like duplicate herself. And basically they have this relationship, and that also comes to fruition as well, which is really great. So you have Eve, who is basically, again, going through her own development with Mark, you know, trying to find their way in the world. Like they're trying to find a place to stay, you know, to develop their relationship. They're trying to also create a business to support themselves, like find jobs. And there's just a lot of like dynamics like that that really does make this show pretty special. You have the dynamic between Eve and her parents. The mom is trying to be a really good mother. The father, who's seems kind of bigoted in a way, and is an acceptance of not a lot of the superheroes and what they're doing and all that fun stuff. So that is a also interesting dynamic to see in the show. You have several supervillains that show up in the show who have really great backgrounds to them. One specifically is one that had his sister, I believe, die in one of the accidents from the superheroes fighting. So he has this vendetta against Invincible. He basically has this ability to expel electricity, and he works for C-Cell, who in the government, and he steals these devices that basically allows him to absorb power. So if someone punches him several times, he can absorb the blows, and then he can expel that through additional electricity, which is really cool. So there's a really interesting dynamic there with that character. There's the main villain who I talked about earlier. There's several other super villains in the show that really feel well developed and grounded and believable, which is awesome. See the dynamic between Omni-Man, who is entrapped in prison with another character named Alan, who's another superhero, super strong, kind of like a Viltrumite, but he's not a Viltrumite. I really enjoy the dynamic between these characters just because Omni-Man is voiced by J.K. Simmons, who's fantastic, and then Alan is voiced by Seth Rogen, which is also very... it's just a very interesting dichotomy between the two characters and listening to them to talk and speak and stuff like that. See them trying to figure out what they want to do in their life in prison, and Alan's trying to basically become friends with Omni-Man as soon as he can to try to get back to Earth and hopefully help out Mark and the other people to, you know, survive what's potentially coming to attack them. You have another character that shows up. I think his name is Battle Beast, who's literally just like a giant lion who looks like just a really buff lion dude who's really strong and really powerful. He's also one of the strongest characters in the show. I think he kicks Mark's ass sometime in season 2, which is really crazy. But yeah, the dynamic between these three characters in the prison is really fun. So you have all of these characters having some crazy development going on. And then you have this Viltrumite show up at the very end of the show on season 8, or technically at the end of season 7. And his name is Conquest. Conquest is a very interesting character. He is one of the strongest Viltrumites, and he's so strong that he's basically pushed himself away from other Viltrumites in a really negative way. He talks about how lonely he is because no one understands how he is as an actual human, and it's frustrating for him. And so he basically takes out his loneliness and frustrations out on just everyone and just kills everyone. So he's there to do the Viltrumites' bidding, but he's actually there to just have fun and kill because they told him that there was like no restrictions for what's going on. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. The fights that happen, they harken back to season 1 when Mark and Omni-Man are fighting. Like there's a moment where like he holds Mark up into like a subway train as it's driving and they're floating, and he's like going through all of the people in the train, and it's just like ridiculously violent. He's just sitting there like with his eyes open, like just seeing people blow up in front of him. And there's another moment in this season, in this episode that happens. It's fantastic. Which goes back to, again, talking about the animations. The animation quality for these last 2 episodes are just phenomenal. Like, you can tell they really took their time with it. If they did this for the next season, I would be so happy. So towards the end of the season, Mark is still struggling to make these decisions. He talks to Oliver, who is his brother, that he's like, you're right. You know, maybe sometimes I do need to make these hard decisions to protect people in life, you know, and that's one of his biggest struggles, was trying to figure out if it was okay for him to take another person's life to save thousands of, if not millions of other people. And then you have Eve, who appears to be like one of the most strongest characters in the entire show. Apparently when she was younger, they prohibited her ability to actually use her full powers, so she ends up kind of dying at the end of the episode. And she basically talks about how she wasn't able to use her powers to the full extent of her abilities, and how it's happened before, how she was able to do it, but it's only when she's like pushed to her limits that she can access those powers. So then going back to Cecil a little bit, Cecil, again, he's the head of the government programs on the planet. He tries to get all the superheroes together to, you know, fight for the common good. Cecil makes some decisions in this season that might seem out of character, and I think that is just due to him being scared. He fights and butts heads with Mark for like most of the show, because Mark wants him to basically just defend and fight while Mark is trying to figure out his own path. people are saying that sometimes Cecil's doing things that are completely out of his character. He's supposed to be like this super inline, super hyper intelligent, fighting for the good of people. But it also shows earlier in the season that he's done things in the past that aren't great, and he does it to, you know, for the betterment, but it's not exactly the greatest thing, you know. So Cecil in general is still one of my favorite characters. I do feel like he doesn't act out of character in this season. I do think it is just due to the fact that he's scared of superheroes like Invincible, like Mark, because he's so strong, and he doesn't know if there's a way for him to respond to characters and superheroes like him. And so I feel like Cecil's kind of making decisions that kind of go against who he was in the previous seasons, which is I think it's great for his development. I mean, you've people who are developing up. Why can't you have characters who are developing down and kind of becoming almost supervillains? And I don't necessarily think that Cecil is like a supervillain per se. I think that he's just making a lot of rash decisions. He ends up taking Conquest's body and like putting it into like a crazy like secured location, but it's like not really super secured, and that tells us that Conquest isn't actually dead. And so I could see potentially Cecil and Conquest potentially gaining up and trying to reach some kind of agreement down the line. Who knows? While on the side of what's going on with that, he's having his team internally develop like these hybrid superhero cyborgs that they can control and deploy when need be. They just could not do that during the fights in this season because they just weren't tested and ready. So that's also good that he didn't just willy-nilly deploy them even though they weren't ready, because that could have been an issue. But yeah, it also shows that he's kind of making some decisions that aren't exactly great. So I don't think it's necessarily out of character for him. I just think that it's just different to what we're used to, which is, I don't think is a bad thing. So all of this kind of combined together, again, I think it's one of the best shows, period, right now on TV. I think it's worth pretty much everyone's time to consider it and checking out 1,000%. So there was a pretty big gap in between season 1 and season 2. Season 1 came out, I think, mid or early 2021 and released. For season 2 came out end of 2023 and kind of led into mid 2024, I think, for season 2 ending. Season 3 started, I believe, this year, and it ran for 2 months. I think it started in early February and ran to, you know, today. So they are kind of all over the place when it comes to releasing the show. I can see it, since it is gaining popularity, them picking up the pace, maybe them taking a little bit more time on the animations. That might hopefully hopefully they do that. I'd be willing to wait a little bit longer for that. But otherwise, I see no point in stopping for the show. Again, it's fantastic. I love basically every aspect of the show, and I think it's worth people's time to check out. So yeah, that's basically it. I just wanted to mention it. I appreciate people's time checking this out. If you have any recommendations, we're live basically every single day this month on Twitch and YouTube. Definitely check us out there. I'm going to be doing my best to upload more videos like this consistently, maybe once a week for long form videos like this. We're doing shorts every couple days as well, but I do appreciate everyone's feedback. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.